Hey, what's up? This is another episode of the Stud Chronicles. I'm making sure that I put this information out there because I'm talking about more than just being a lesbian and being a stud. I like to talk about subjects that pertain to me and the world around me. So today I want to talk about belonging. Belonging. Belonging is very important, especially as a gay person, especially as a different person, especially as a black person, especially as a woman. It's very important. And a lot of times, as a gay person, as a stud, many people may feel like we don't belong. We don't belong in certain situations. We don't belong in certain neighborhoods. We don't belong in certain places. That's how society feels. They feel like we are not allowed to be in a certain place or a certain area just because we're different. How can you tell another person that they don't belong? Or how can you feel like a person doesn't belong in your neighborhood because they're different? That is completely wrong. Your mentality is completely wrong. Let me tell you something. Most of these police officers that are patrolling the areas, they don't even know who lives in the neighborhoods that they're patrolling because they don't take the time out to get to know who the people are. They don't. They're only there just doing the job that they want to do, but not getting to know the community that they live in. I've been to many cities, and the cities that I've been to, how I know how to find the gay club is I go to the gay neighborhoods. There are gay neighborhoods where it's only a lot of gay people that live there. You know, because you'll see the rainbow flags everywhere. You'll see rainbow everywhere on the streets, you know. Uh, they be hanging the flags in front of the yard and stuff. And that's how you know that it's a gay neighborhood. What about living in a different type of neighborhood? What about living in a mixed neighborhood where it's not just the gay neighborhood and you don't see the rainbow flags? What about those neighborhoods? How do people know what type of neighborhood it is and who's living there? How do they know this information? They don't know the information, right? They don't know who's living in the neighborhood. They have no idea. They don't know that black people is living in the neighborhood. I'm wondering if we have to put a sign or a flag on our front yard that say black people live here. Like they do in the gay neighborhood where they have a rainbow flag. Do we have to put a sign in front of our door that says black people live here? That this is a black man's house or a black woman's house? What do we have to do so that people can know we belong in this neighborhood? Because it's sad how people don't even get to know their neighbors anymore. They don't get to know the people that's living in their neighborhood to the point where when they just move in, they just assume that everybody in the neighborhood is like them. They don't get to know their neighbors anymore. When I was growing up, didn't matter how older I got, the neighborhood still stayed the same. The same people that's been living on that block since I was a baby still live on that block to this day. Why? Because it's a community. It's not just people buying a house in the neighborhood and not getting to know their neighbors. We know everybody in the neighborhood. As a matter of fact, the lady who used to babysit me and my sister when we was babies lived right next door. Right next door to my daddy's house. My best friends that I grew up with, they live right on the same block. Now, they might have grown up and moved, but their mama still lived there. Their daddy still lived there. They know everybody in the neighborhood. Everybody. That is a sense of community. That is a neighborhood of community. What happened? What happened to those days when everybody get to know their neighbors? They go bring their neighbors some cookies or a pie and say, welcome to the neighborhood. Can you do that now? No, you can't do that now because people don't want to get to know their neighbors. Instead, they just want to assume who belongs in their neighborhood. So they don't have a sense of community anymore in the neighborhoods where people get to know their neighbors, where the police officers actually know the people that live in their community. Back in the days, they used to have neighborhood watches. Why? Because it was needed. It was needed. They used to have town hall meetings. Why? Because it was needed. Anything that's going on in the neighborhood, everybody needs to know. But they don't have those type of meetings no more. The only meetings they have right now is if you're living in a neighborhood where they have a neighborhood committee, the ones who take care of to keeping the neighborhood clean. You get fined. Now you're getting. I forgot what they call them. The administration. They call them something. I forgot. But right now they have it whereas they giving tickets if you park on your lawn or you parking on a sidewalk or on a street and stuff. Those are the people that actually know the neighborhoods. They know the people that's living there. Why? Because they have to know everybody who lives there. That's their job, is to know everybody who lives in that particular community. Because why? They have to pay those dues every single month to these people. Every single month. They can approve for a whole committee to charge you for your house that you're living in. You have to pay monthly for these people just for them to watch your neighborhood and to make sure your neighborhood stays clean. This is a requirement nowadays, depending on what state you're living in and what neighborhood you're living in. That's how it is now. And they have it whereas, you got to pay. My mom pays monthly dues to these people. I think she pays like $200 a month to these people. And their job is to watch the neighborhood and make sure that the neighborhood is okay. Make sure that every house in the neighborhood is good. So they know every single person. They know you by name. They know you by face. Because why? They got to meet up with you. They got to meet up with the neighborhood. They got to hold meetings with the neighborhood so that everybody could know the people that's in charge in that neighborhood. That is the only sense of community that we have nowadays. Is to have a whole committee that's supposed to be over your neighborhood that you paying monthly dues to. Now, to me, I wasn't for that. I don't like the fact that they charging. I don't like the fact that they're giving tickets. If you got trash in your yard, they give you a ticket. If you change the color of your house, they give you a ticket. If you have a party and people are parked on the sidewalk for your party, they're giving you a ticket. If your music is too loud, they're giving you a ticket. But what happens when there's a disturbance in the neighborhood? What happens? Do they call the police? Do they call for help? Do they help you at all? What happens? When there's people that move into the neighborhood and they say that somebody doesn't belong there. Why? Because they don't know the people that lives in the neighborhood. What happens? What happens? Times have changed. It's not the same anymore. It's not whereas it's community, a sense of community in your neighborhood. No, because they're not having that anymore. The politicians don't give a damn about who's in the neighborhood. The police don't give a damn about who's in the neighborhood. The government doesn't give a damn about who's in the neighborhood. They don't care. That's the reason why they don't take the time out to get to know you. They don't take the time out to get to know what you care about. They don't. Back in the days, they used to have town hall meetings where you'll get a flyer on your door or in your mailbox stating we having a town hall meeting. Everybody in the neighborhood has to gather together for this town hall meeting, and we have to meet up together because we need to find out what's going on in our neighborhood. We need to talk about what's going on in our neighborhood. We need to talk about the things that you see and what you want in your neighborhood. They don't have those meetings no more. Why? Because it used to be where people actually cared about the community. They actually cared about the neighborhood. The crime and the police made it so bad that people don't care anymore about the neighborhood. They don't care about what's going on. There's no sense of belonging in the neighborhood and the communities anymore. I grew up in a big neighborhood, and we all went to the same elementary school in that neighborhood. Everybody. Everybody. So all the parents would meet up at the school when they have school meetings. Everybody and their mamas at that school meeting. That's how you know everybody who belongs there, right? Or everybody who lives there. Because they have the school meetings and everybody's going to the school meetings. That's when people gather together and they get to know one another. They get to know who's in their neighborhood based on the fact that they have kids. That was a way for people to gather together so they could know their neighbors. It helped me too. It helped me because when I had kids and I was taking care of my kids, and they would go to the elementary school, I got to know the parents at the elementary school. So I got to know who was living in the neighborhood, right? I got to know the people that was living in the neighborhood because why? I had kids. What about the people that don't have kids? What about the elderly people that live in the neighborhood? I was living in a neighborhood whereas the older people in the neighborhood, they don't come out the house. come out the house because either A, they too sick to come out the house, or B, they just like staying inside because the world is so scary outside of their house. They got to stay inside, mind their own business. I used to like living in the neighborhoods where it was older people living in the neighborhoods. Why? Because the older people, they watched out for the neighborhood. They see everything that happens on the block. Everything. They're the ones you go to when there's a problem because they already seen what happened. Why? Because that's what they do all day is bird watching. They watch the neighborhood. If anything was going on, you would hear about it instantly. If you want to know what's going on, go ask the older lady who lives on the block. Because believe me, she saw something that was happening. She saw what was going on. And the people that work, they just go to work. They go to work, they come home. That's what they do every day. Most of the time, those are the ones that you don't see in the neighborhood because they're constantly working. They go to work early in the morning, they come home late at night, and you don't see those people in the neighborhood. You don't know those people in the neighborhood. Why? Because they're always working. They're working people. They have families to take care of. They have themselves to take care of. So they gone most of the time. You don't notice them. You don't see who's in the neighborhood. So you really don't know who belongs in the neighborhood or who should be in the neighborhood. Why? Because most people don't take the time out to get to know their neighbors. They just assume they don't belong there. I remember I lived on a block where it was mostly white people on that block. And when me and my girlfriend moved in, right, we was looked at kind of crazy. Looked at real crazy. Like, what y'all doing in this neighborhood? And I'm a stud. I don't look feminine. So you can't, you don't know what the hell I am, right? There was a lady who came and brought us some chocolates. I guess she was calling herself getting to know the neighbors because that's what white people do. And I'm not saying it to be prejudiced. I'm just letting you know what happens in a neighborhood when black people move in. That's what they do. They want to get to know who is the neighbor in the neighborhood. They so nosy to the point where they'll come knocking on your door, just welcoming you to the neighborhood, just so they can get to know who you are. That's how I got to know a lot of my neighbors because they stuck their nose in my business, right? There was this one lady who gave us some chocolates. She wanted to welcome us to the neighborhood, so she gave us some chocolates. Mind you, these chocolates was like over a year old. Old ass chocolates, you heard me? Chocolate that nobody could eat because it was so bad. That could tell you she didn't really want to get to know her neighbor. She just wanted to be nosy and see who was there. Right? Because she wasn't trying to make us happy. She was giving us some old ass chocolate we couldn't even eat. And it was messed up. Because I couldn't believe the lady gave us this old ass chocolate. Now, I knew I couldn't trust my neighbors. I knew that. And even the ones that was prejudiced wasn't so bad. The crazy part about it is, I think what it is about racism is that people grew up with such a stigma on black people that they don't really get the chance or take the time out to get to know black people, let alone gay people. They don't take the time out to get to know us. They just assume from watching TV, assume from the stories that they were told when they were kids, assume because of society and the people that they grew up with. If you only grew up in the world of white people and they all think the same way, then that's how you're going to be. You're going to turn out the same way because you're put in a pile of people that's all the same. They all think the same way. Until you decide to think differently. Until you decide to be differently. Until you decide to get to know the people that's in your neighborhood. And I'm not talking about in a bad way, whereas you just go and give them some old stale ass chocolates. I'm talking about where you actually sit down and talk to these people and get to know who they are. Most people don't want to get to know their neighbors. They don't want to get to know the people who move right next door. We've seen it too many times. As a matter of fact, they got TV shows going on about this right now. Whereas the black people are the only ones moving in the white neighborhood. And we know not only from TV, but also from history, that when it's a white neighborhood and the black people move in, they say it makes the value go down. They say the people in the neighborhood want to move because it's black people moving in the neighborhood. But you ain't even take the time to get to know the black people that's in your neighborhood. You ain't even take the time to get to know these people. Yet you have an opinion. Yet you think you know them. And they're just regular Americans who are working. Just want to make a living, take care of their household, take care of their children. Yet you have an opinion because you don't really know black people. You only know what you were told. You only know what these people tell you. That's it. That's all. That's all you know. Ignorance. Ignorance is real. Ignorance is real. Ignorance right now is killing people because of your ignorance. Because of your lack of knowledge, your lack of understanding. And I'm guilty. I'm guilty of not getting to know my neighbors, not all of them. Even when I go see my neighbors, they talk about other neighbors. You know, they even talk about the Indian couple that comes and they walks around over here. And me, I look at them like they regular people. Like, who am I to say they don't belong in the neighborhood? Who am I to say that? Who are you to say that? I don't know their culture. I don't know who they are. I can't look at these people and say they don't belong in this neighborhood because they ain't like us. Any more than you can say I don't belong in this neighborhood because I ain't like you. Ignorance is what it is. It's ignorance. People are so afraid of people who are different from them. So afraid. Why are you so scared of a person that is just a human being, just like you? Why are you so afraid? Because it's only fear that makes people act the way they do. Fear. You're afraid of somebody coming to your neighborhood. You're afraid black people gonna move in your neighborhood because why? The stigma. The stigma. That black people are bad, that black people deal drugs, that black people are on drugs, that black people, are bad people to be around. So this stigma, not the truth, but the stigma is the reason why people act the way they do. The stigma. So it makes you think that these people, this person does not belong in your neighborhood. Why? Because you live by stigma, not by the truth. But by your ignorance. You're ignorant. You're ignorant. You're ignorant. If you thought you were smart, you're not. A wise man knows that he doesn't know everything. So in order for you to know, in order for you to learn about the people that's in your neighborhood, how about you go and talk to them first? That is a more better way of communicating. Bring a fucking pie or some cookies. Back in the days, they used to give the mailman cookies and cakes and all different types of goodies just for delivering the mail. The mailman know everybody in the neighborhood to the point where he know them by name. Hell, my mailman know me by name. So when my mail come, I know my mail gonna reach there because he know me by name. I ain't never got to worry about my mail because I know the mailman got me. You heard me? Why don't we take the time out to get to know the people that lives in our neighborhood? Back in the days, we couldn't even live in a diverse world, in a diverse community. We couldn't live in a diverse community. It was all segregated. And even when segregation was over, it was still segregated. Why? Because when black people move in the neighborhood, the white people move out. You know, when I was doing a lot of Uber, I was doing Uber rides and stuff, and I would do Uber Eats and work for that company, and I'd be delivering for Postmates too, and I would deliver food. And I talked to a lot of white people that live in the neighborhood. I talked to a lot of them. Why? Because I'm not an ignorant human being. I know it's different people in the world. I'm not afraid to talk to people, no matter what nationality or race you are. I'm not afraid to talk to them because I'm very aware that people are different. And I'm not afraid of you because you're different. So I talk to them, right? And a lot of them voiced to me that they don't like living in an all-white neighborhood. That's strange, huh? But they don't like living in a white neighborhood because they feel like it's boring. They miss having black people around where it made it funner. They wish they had black people living in the neighborhood that they're living in now. Isn't that strange? Because it didn't used to be like that. It used to be where everybody was segregated no matter what. You'll see an Indian culture, you'll see the Indians in one neighborhood, you'll see the Africans in one neighborhood, you'll see the Mexicans in one neighborhood, the Chinese in another neighborhood. Matter of fact, they got towns that you know when you hit that part of town, you know which neighborhood you was in based on the people and the culture. I knew what Chinatown was in Houston. I knew the Mexicans lived in Escondido in San Diego. You knew what side of town you was living on based on the culture and the people, right? It's not many diverse neighborhoods. But when you move to a diverse neighborhood, Then you should ask yourself, who's living in your neighborhood? Who's there? Don't be oblivious to think or ignorant to think that you're the only person that's white in the neighborhood, or maybe everybody in the neighborhood is white. Don't think that. Because diversity is today. We're not living in the old days where there was no diversity. We're living in a diverse world today. And the way the real estate market is, it's not like back in the days they would only sell to a certain culture depending on who the seller was. So they knew who they was putting in the neighborhood. Nowadays, they just buying a home because it's the right time. It's inexpensive. It might be a foreclosure. So they take advantage of the sale. They're not really worrying about who's in the neighborhood. It's all about capital. It's all about the money and how much it costs to buy that house. They didn't go and scope out the neighborhood and say, I'm gonna figure out who living in the neighborhood first before I buy this house. No, they buying it based on the price. That's why that lady, the white lady, said she moved to a hick town where it was nothing but rednecks, and she was mad that she lived in that neighborhood. But she didn't buy that neighborhood based on the fact that she did her research first. No, she bought that location because it was feasible for her. It was inexpensive for her. Nowadays, you find a lot of people coming from California. They coming from San Francisco, these expensive ass places, and they want to move to a rural place because why? It's cheaper. Did they scope out the neighborhood before they moved there? No. They buying it based on the fact that it's cheaper to live. So no, they didn't check the neighborhood out. They didn't check their neighbors. They didn't say, oh, well, let's see what type of neighborhood it is before we move there. No, people don't think like that no more because everybody is struggling. Everybody is struggling. Most people don't have the luxury of choosing the neighborhoods that they move in. They don't have those type of luxuries. Not at all. So what you got to ask yourself is when you move into a neighborhood, do you belong in that neighborhood? Do you? That's the question that you have to ask yourself. Don't ask the neighbors if they belong there because they was there before you got there. You have to ask yourself, do you belong in the neighborhood? Do you belong in the neighborhood? Because if it's a diverse neighborhood, do you belong there? Are you a diverse person? Are you fit to live amongst people who decided to be diverse? Who's not discriminating? Who's not racist? Do you belong in the neighborhood? Why are you buying in the neighborhood that you don't belong in? Why do the people in the neighborhood have to suffer because you moved in? Because you're in a place that you don't even want to be. If you too scared to live next door to a black person, then why are you there? You need to move. If you too scared to live next door to a gay person, then why are you there? You need to move. Because it's unfair to the community. It's unfair to the neighborhood that you're there. You don't belong. You can't move into a neighborhood and say the people that's been there don't belong there. Who the hell are you? And these police officers, they don't know who their neighbors are. They have no idea when they're going to go patrol in the neighborhood who the neighbors are, because they don't take the time out to get to know the people. How dare you say somebody don't belong in that neighborhood? Because that's what you're saying anytime you taking a word for anybody. Ask them first if they know their neighbors. And if you got information to be able to know who lives in that neighborhood, then you need to radio some people and tell them to look up that address and see who lives there. Don't just take the information to the people who don't belong there and who feel like nobody else belongs there because it's them. Y'all don't take the time out to ask questions, let alone anything else. All y'all do is shoot first. And if somebody say they live there, what the hell makes you think they don't? You know how many people are buying houses nowadays? Who the fuck are you to say they don't belong there? How dare you say they don't belong there? Did you buy that house for them? What you should have been asking the people is how long you been living here? When did you move in this neighborhood? That's what you should be asking. Is when did you move in this neighborhood? Who are you? Not just taking their words because they white. My dad, who was an American citizen, he came from another country. And he's always been different. My dad used to carry a knife. And that's why I love the Crocodile Dundee movie, because he reminded me of my dad. I kind of looked at my dad that way, like he was just a superhero, you know? My dad carried a Crocodile Dundee knife. It was a huge knife, you heard me? And he'd take out that knife to cut up fruits for us. Cut up fruits, and whenever he seen like sugar cane, he'll cut the sugar cane with the knife. If we seen it on the side of the road or something, or we saw some fruit or something that he wanted to cut, he'll cut it with the knife, right? That's what my dad normally used the knife for. He never really used it for anything else, but I guess, you know, in his country, they carry knives for protection, right? When is it against the law to carry a knife for your protection? Back in the days, they used to have those little knives, right? The little knives, the little pocket knives that people carry around. You know? It was not against the law to carry a pocket knife. There are so many men in the world right now that carry knives. They may do it just for, you know, to fix things. You know, sometimes it's good for fixing things, or like my dad did, cut up fruit. But it's a lot of men, especially foreign men, you know, they carry knives because this is how they were, you know, raised to do that. But when has that been against the law to carry a knife? And a lot of these men who work on the houses and stuff, they carry utility knives. This is normal. It's not against the law. But why is it that a black man who has a knife is a problem? Did you grow up without a father, without an uncle, that you don't know that men carry knives? I mean, where you from? Where you from? That's normal. Mostly men work on houses. They are mechanics. They carry knives. It's normal. Who are you to say it's not normal? It's normal. People are so lost in their own world that they don't really see how other people's world can be. You don't see how other cultures live and who they are and how they live. You have no idea because you don't know people. You only know yourself. You only know the people that you grew up with. But you have no clue what other people's cultures are like. None. You have no clue. That's called ignorance. I remember living in a household. I was renting a room. And these were some Mexican people. And in the country, part of Mexico they were from, it was the hood. It was a real poor area. And so they grew up with not a good plumbing system. So in their culture, they would take their tissue when they wipe, they would throw it in the garbage can instead of in the toilet. Right? They that's how they grew up. They didn't grow up, using the toilet flush system because they didn't have a good flush system. Now, if somebody else who's American been around these people, they would think something is going on with these people, like something is wrong with them mentally. Like they got a mental health issue because they throwing the tissue into the garbage can rather than the toilet. Or because they're different, because their culture is different, because they grew up differently. And I've witnessed it myself. And at first I had, questions as to why it's happening because I didn't grow up like that. My parents didn't raise me like that. I didn't have to grow up with, we had a problem with, plumbing system. So I couldn't understand why they were doing what they were doing. Right. And a lot of prejudice that goes on in their own culture. They think, something is wrong. Or what they tell you is they from a such and such part, where it was really poor over there. And so they didn't have a good flush race, system. And even in their own culture, they prejudice against each other from the rich to the poor. It's sad how the world thinks and how the world is. And we have no respect for other people's cultures or their lives and how they live and how they grew up. It's sad. Because I respected it. Because they're different from me. Doesn't mean that it's right or wrong. It just means they're different. They grew up differently. Their culture is different. They didn't grow up rich. I remember they said that in Jamaica, they said that gay women are allowed to be in Jamaica. Allowed, in other words, they wouldn't be discriminated against, they wouldn't be killed, they wouldn't be messed up, but they'll be messed up if it was a gay man that was in Jamaica because of the culture and because how they grew up and they were taught how the slave man used men, in a sexual way to use their power. And So the gay women are allowed to be in their neighborhood, allowed to be in a community, because they don't feel fear against, you know, the gay woman, just the gay man. And so as a gay man, you got to fear for your life if you in Jamaica or you in other countries where it's not really common or accepted. They feel like they don't have a sense of belonging, like they don't belong in that neighborhood. And that's why gay people have to go look for their neighborhoods to go live around that, where it's accepted, where people are accepted. They're not being judged based on who they are and based on being different. Not based on the color of their skin, not based on their sexual preference, not based on anything. They have to go live in a neighborhood where it's diverse. Because why? You could lose your life. It's detrimental. Get to know your neighbors. Get to know the people that's in your neighborhood. It doesn't matter who they are. Just get to know them. Because you never know who the neighbors can be. I remember I had an ex that whatever neighborhood she moved in, all her friends moved in too. Or either they became her friends when she moved in that neighborhood. But when she would cook, the whole neighborhood would come over just to eat. Getting to know your neighbors is not a bad thing. And even though I was living in a prejudiced neighborhood, I still got to know my neighbors because they needed to know who I was. I'm gay and I'm black. You might see some things that you probably don't like, but I'm going to let you know who I am anyway. And even some of them who were prejudiced turned out to be cool people. Why? Because they got to know who I was. It's a sad reality in the world that we live in where people don't want to get to know their neighbors. To the point where you a danger to your neighbor because you don't belong there. Why go live in a neighborhood if you're not a diverse person? Why? You don't belong there. Not that they don't belong there, you don't belong there. I'm going to definitely show diversity because diversity is needed. The very thing that Martin Luther King talked about in his dream was that every nationality, every color would be able to live in the same neighborhood, on the same block, and have peace and not be judged based on your differences. And police officers, if you're going to patrol a neighborhood, make sure you get to know your neighbors. Introduce yourself to your neighbors. Get to know who they are. Because if you call yourself patrolling the neighborhood We need to know who you are. Period. Y'all don't even know your neighbors. Let yet all the places you're patrolling. You just go looking for trouble. And do your research before you accuse anybody of anything. That's what y'all computers are for. Y'all want to look up everybody's information, right? Then look it up before you believe what anybody else say. Because you don't know what type of mental state people are at. You don't know if something wrong with the people that you talk to. They might be crazy people. Yet you're going to take their word for it. What they say about you? That you don't do your job. You're not good at your job. Furthermore, you shouldn't even have the job. Police are supposed to be able to investigate. Not just believe what other people say. You don't need that job if you can't investigate the problem. You're supposed to ask questions. Not just to one person, the person that called you, but ask the neighbors. Ain't that what investigation is about? You're supposed to ask everybody? The one thing I know is the older people saw something in that neighborhood. They know the people that live in that neighborhood. And how can you take one person's word for it instead of asking the neighbors what's going on? No, you took it upon yourself to believe what somebody else said. And you did no investigation, nor did you introduce yourself. So you have already broken the law. By not introducing yourself, it is against the law for you as a police officer not to introduce yourself. But that's how much of a bad police officer you are, because you don't even know your own law. You don't even know what your job description is and what you're supposed to do. Most of the people that have these jobs don't even know what they're supposed to do. If in real estate, every so often they're supposed to take classes, why the hell aren't these police officers? And they claim that they are. But y'all need to go over the stuff that you should already know. Like reading a person a Miranda rights. Y'all don't even do your jobs. As far as I'm concerned, y'all really don't need your jobs. We'll do a better job with patrolling our own neighborhoods, because at least we don't have to worry about us killing us more than y'all killing us. You don't even hear about the gang crimes anymore. Now all you hear about is police officers doing the crime. And they're the ones that's supposed to be protecting us. And if you don't know the neighborhood, you don't know the community, how can you ever say somebody don't belong there or don't live there? We don't need y'all, bruh. We could take that same money and pay the people of our neighborhood to watch our own neighborhoods. We don't need y'all. Y'all don't need your jobs anymore. Why? Because you're doing a lousy job, bruh. Y'all ain't even doing research no more. All y'all doing is just killing people. Y'all the murderers. Y'all the terrorists. And we going through it. Why? Because you don't belong there. You don't belong in that job. If y'all too scared to apprehend people or talk to people without the fucking gun, then you don't need your fucking badge. You have broken the law when you don't introduce yourself as a police officer. If you didn't know the law, then you should know that. You have broken the law. You should be held accountable for your actions because you, as a police officer, didn't even follow your own protocol. That is against the law. So you can't say who don't belong in that neighborhood because you don't know. You don't know the person that bought a house in that neighborhood. In real estate, they sell houses all the time, bro. All the time. People are buying houses all the time. How the hell can you say somebody don't belong in the neighborhood if you didn't do your own research? How can you say that? You can't. You just want to use your damn authority. And you don't even know the law yourself. You should be held accountable for your actions. And anybody else who feel like they don't want to get to know the neighborhood first before shooting. Who the hell are you? To say somebody else don't belong when you don't even know these people. The people that belong there, you ask somebody, ask the neighbors, ask anybody because they know who belongs in their neighborhood. You don't. You don't even know the law. Go ahead and cut this off. I hope I made my point clear. Get to know your neighbors. God bless your neighborhood and the community that's in it. These are sad and terrible times we live in. Anytime you can't buy a house in a neighborhood and you die because of it, or you die because you've been there, and the new neighbors that moved in don't know you. God bless Matthew's family. We need to change our neighborhoods. God bless you.